Perhaps you've already started and you've been given the okay to start an OSPO, or you're still early in your OSPO journey. What other high-level steps can you take to formalize your OSPO and establish a solid foundation? So having a formal OSPO strategy policy process for your organization means better understanding and traction when it comes to managing your use of open source. So your inventory of your open source is critical because you need to understand what you're using and how you've complied. We only briefly touched on this earlier, but this can also help with assessing risk as well as helping to formulate longer term strategies for risk mitigation. Discovering issues earlier in the development cycle means less impact on development times and teams, and to meet critical business deadlines like release dates. You can equate finding licensing issues or potentially security vulnerabilities to finding a bug in a software application. The earlier it's discovered, the less expensive and impactful it is to correct. You should require your third-party suppliers and OEMs to disclose their use of open source. You don't know your full risk until you know what you've used in your product. You also can't remediate or fix anything you don't know you have. And then the basics of open source compliance and management should be taught at all levels in the organization. So what have others done? If you're looking for even more information, there are a lot of resources for starting an OSPO. A quick search in your favorite browser will turn up lots of results. I haven't personally reviewed all of them, so it's difficult to comment on which ones are worth following. For a specific example, the To-Do group, which I mentioned earlier, is an open community of practitioners who aims to create and share knowledge, collaborate on practices, tools, and other ways to run successful and effective OSPOs. They have case studies, guides, and a very active community among many other resources. I would say they have more of a mix of both the consumption and contribution sides to open source. I've also noticed that several universities are now offering resources for OSPOs, perhaps just for their internal OSPOs. But there are some great resources. I haven't noticed any schools yet that are offering classes or other education for how to start an OSPO. We didn't get too much into OpenChain, but there are lots of great resources there as well. So OpenChain is also a project from the Linux Foundation. They maintain the ISO 5230 standard, which defines the key requirements of a quality open source license compliance program. For those that might be focused more on managing consumption of open source, by meeting ISO 5230 requirements, this often gets you most of the way to having a functioning OSPO. So the standard focuses more on what elements an OSPO or an open source program should contain and less on how. So how are the requirements, how they're implemented and met is up to each individual company, and certainly help is available if you need it. OSS Consultants is an official partner of OpenChain, and we've helped a number of companies with various stages of attaining conformance to ISO 5230, including BlackBerry, which was the first whole entity conformance and also the first whole entity conformance with an official OpenChain partner. The Linux Foundation published a really nice, concise case study about how we helped BlackBerry attain conformance to ISO 5230. So we published a blog article on our site at the link below if you're interested, and we also have the link to download the PDF directly from our site. I guess while you're there checking out the case study, you can also have a look at some of the OSPO and other open source resources we provide as well. And I'll wrap up these slides here with a concluding thought. We've discussed at length about the need and importance of having an OSPO and an open source policy and following a process. But sometimes you really just need to start with the basics, which is a great place to start if you're not really doing anything today to manage your use of open source at your organization. As I said earlier, every organization has its constraints, whether that's people, funding, tooling, support. It's important to start somewhere. Aim for the lowest hanging fruit that you can reach. It's fine to start with an Excel list of the open source you know about, until you can get support and budget for a scanning solution or a more formalized process like an OSPO. Do something. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. our trusted partner in open source management.